United Nations Climate Change Conference is about to get underway in the Danish capital, Copenhagen. Delegates from 192 countries are gathering for 2 weeks of talks on how to combat global warming. Well, let's cross live now to RT's Laura Emmett in Denmark. Hello to you, Laura. Now, what big initiatives can be expected at the conference, and how likely is it really that we'll get an agreement to supplant the Kyoto Protocol?
Well, Kerry, as you said, you can see the hall behind me filling up here. We're just about to have the opening ceremony on this UN summit on climate change. People are calling it the most important international summit that there's ever been. And really the world is watching. 56 newspapers today have combined together to run the same leader column. One of them is Russia's Novaya Gazeta, and they are saying they're calling on world leaders to broker a meaningful and binding agreement. And the response has been overwhelming for attendance at this conference. 15,000 delegates have been registered, but 34,000 wanted to come, and there are also 5,000 journalists in attendance, so it's certainly not a small event. Is there hope for a deal? I think there is more now. The latest news that we have on various countries pledging initiatives is that South Africa has promised 34% cuts in greenhouse gas emissions by 2020. That's if rich countries provide money and technology. And that will put pressure on countries like China to be more specific about the emissions, about their pledges to cut emissions. But a deal is certainly not guaranteed. We're not looking for a deal necessarily at this conference. We're more looking for a sort of agreement, a sort of prototype of what a deal could involve. So I think that's probably what we'll end up with at the end of the day.
Now, Laura, we've been hearing much lately about scepticism relating to the science of global warming, which some argue is a natural phenomenon and not man-made. Will we be hearing much from skeptics at the conference, or indeed elsewhere in the Danish capital?
Well, you're right, Kerry. We have had an awful lot from skeptics recently, particularly in the last few weeks, following the leaking of those emails which suggested that the science around climate change was being made up in some way. And we will actually have skeptics here at this conference. One example I can give you is that the leader of the British National Party, Nick Griffin, will be here in his guise as a member of the European Parliament, representing Europe, but as a climate change skeptic. But not only will there be skeptics here at this UN summit, there will also be a separate meeting which will go on Tuesday and Wednesday, and that will be specifically held in Copenhagen during this summit in order to bring a sort of the other side of the argument. Let's hear a bit more about what the skeptics say. Is climate change a real threat, or is it just for profit? My colleague Irina Galshko.
Global warming, a man-made disaster or a man-made myth? From Kyoto to Copenhagen, scientists, politicians and activists convene to talk about progress made in battling climate change. So far, only one thing appears certain. Earth's temperatures are rising.
Actually, the temperature is really changing, and the Earth is warming slowly. The problem is how we interpret it, and what are the causes of global warming.
Russian scientist Andrei Kapitsa is among those who say man is not to blame for global warming. According to him, carbon dioxide emissions play no role in creating the greenhouse effect.
There are several factors affecting global warming: the fluctuation of the sun's energy, the fluctuation of the Earth's axis, the Earth's orbit. As they change, we get either a warming or a cooling effect.
In fact, graphs show quite clearly that temperatures on Earth have been rising since the mid-19th century, long before carbon dioxide emissions reached their present level. And a look at another graph backs Professor Kapitsa. It suggests Earth's temperature seems to fluctuate in tune with solar activity. So why the big hullabaloo then? Who needs us to believe that factories, emissions, oil and gas production are killing the planet? Who is sending us on a major environmental guilt trip, and why? Russian TV producer Sergei Nadezhdin tried to answer that question in his documentary on global warming.
A great bureaucracy exists around the idea of global warming, which depends on the danger of an imminent threat. And it's important to understand that idea is an industry which employs many people.
So, when the world's top environmentalists meet yet again in a fancy hotel to discuss how to save the planet over a glass of Cabernet, critics ask, do they really care, or are they simply in it to make another million? Irina Galushko, RT.
Just a couple more things to add, Kerry, before I go. This is having an extraordinary effect on Copenhagen, this summit. It's been dubbed Copenhagen by international advertisers for the duration of the summit, in the hope that a meaningful deal will be signed. But they have, at Copenhagen Airport, 140 extra private jets for the duration. They've got 1,200 limousines. And apparently, ironically, for a global warming conference, this conference in its entirety will produce 41,000 tonnes of CO2. That's as much as Switzerland produced in 2006.
OK, we'll be hearing a lot more of this, of course, as it continues. Laura Emmett reporting live from the UN Climate Change Conference in Copenhagen. Thank you for now.